I used to cut myself to relieve the stress and anger.
75 million Americans suffer from a mental disorder every year.
I'm just like everybody else. I have addictions, I have complications, I have habits, I have depression, anger, sorrow. I'm just another human being. And it doesn't matter how you look. It matters more upon what you are inside.
The National Institute of Mental Health Statistics indicate that more than 35,000 deaths occur every year due to suicide.
And it's always the questions, what if, maybe if I did something different? Is there something that we missed?
At that moment, that definitive moment when you really think it's hopeless and helpless and there's really nothing one can do, who do you know or what do you know is going to happen tomorrow? There's always a tomorrow.
Before we can understand the problem, we must create awareness, knowledge, and understanding of the issues that plague our nation, our communities, our families, and each other.
I was in such pain that I had my shotgun in my hand. I was going to shoot myself right in the head.
It's about a generation. And this generation didn't get here by themselves.
What I really want to portray is that our health is really about us taking the best care of ourselves so that we can take care of each other.
An eating disorder is a binging and purging process. I was up to taking 400 to 500 laxatives a night.
If we don't go through this life trying to help other people, then we're all going to be alone.
If you're a vet coming home from Afghanistan or Vietnam, be proud of what you've done. And if you've got problems with it, ask.
Kids are our future, and if we cannot take care of them, if we cannot prevent them from dying, I think somehow we all fail.
I'm not praying for fame. I'm not praying for finances. I'm not praying for popularity. I'm not praying for even my own healing. I am praying for the lost. Give them back.
It's the one thing human beings have to be able to do in order to be at peace, is to create a narrative, to create a story.
Just as a prisoner is locked in a cell, so are many people locked in the prison of their own mind because of silent issues.
Why can't they just let me go? I want to go home. I want to go home. Can I have my will?
The prison itself, as I say, was really an official prison. It was meant to hold people in a secure position, and we were held very much alone. The experience of being a POW is kind of unique in that I spent 2 years in solitary confinement. From June of 1968 to June of 1970, I never saw another single American the whole time. So about 2 full years of just in solitary confinement. And so you go to the wash area and they close the door and lock you in that, and then they would open the door and they march you back to the room and lock you in that. So although you got a chance to be out, you still didn't see anybody or get a chance to talk to anybody.
I can't believe I'm really here, imprisoned and isolated. How long can this last? And my poor wife? How will you live now that I may never leave this place? My thoughts are running mad. It's causing me to forget your very face. I cannot allow that to happen. My only hope is freedom, to love you again.
It was just boring because you just knew that one day was going to be the next day, and so on. Looking over my life as I saw it in those days, and you realize you think when you're behind bars, you think it's kind of a futile place to be. But I never really realized that I didn't matter. I had a responsibility to my wife and children who were a half world away, and so that responsibility was upmost in my mind. So although I was in prison and couldn't do anything really except eat and sleep and wait, but that was my job at that time, and it was because it matters what your attitude is towards today and the future days.
How we diagnose depression, it needs to be a feeling state that is there for a couple weeks and influencing our functioning. So our functioning is compromised either in our relationships and personal life or in our work life or academic life. And then some of the basic symptoms of it are certainly a sad mood. It could be hopelessness, helplessness, feeling overwhelmed, lack of energy, lack of motivation. It can impact our sleeping, so we can either sleep more or have difficulty falling asleep, or we can eat more or have difficulty with appetite and lose our appetite. Usually cognitive skills like concentration and focus and distractibility are interfered with. Suicidal thoughts can certainly be part of that depression package, as well as just the feeling that there's no hope.
Well, I've been thinking about the future, and I've been thinking about the past, and I've been wondering where I'm going, and if I'm ever coming back. Ooh, the trains are coming. Ooh, and I'm still running. Ooh, the days are flying.
Because Ben was left alone so much in his younger years, he battled depression and self-injury.
When I was little, I always felt alone. Like I was never really understood. Like nobody really quite took the time in order to grasp what I was about. And because of which, I never really felt like I had any true friends. At home, it was really hectic. I would get home from school and I would go straight up to my room. I had a small little room with the roof that slanted down, and I had an army cot as a bed. And I had my own little personal fridge that I kept my soda in. I had a shelving unit next to my bed that had my artwork on it. I had a TV, and luckily there was cable. So I would just sit on my army cot, draw pictures, and watch cartoons.
As a country, we need to look at how we're educating our children and how we're preparing them to live in this century. And I think education and preparation are two different things. You can educate somebody, but they may not have the psychological wherewithal to survive in that environment.
I isolated so much throughout my life that I have a hard time being alone.
If they're suffering from these challenges and they don't have a way out, sometimes they think that suicide is their only way out. And without other resources or having communication with adults to share that with, I think that's going to be very difficult for teens.
I had a huge fascination with going out onto the roof, either to get away or to just find my center. I had no intention for suicide. I just had this vision of death. And that was probably around like 13 years old, and that's when my appreciation for death has started to arise. I have addictions, I have complications, I have habits, I have depression, anger, sorrow. I'm just another human being. And it doesn't matter how you look, it matters more upon what you are inside.
How do we handle the hurts and the wounds and the difficulties that we've experienced in life, either directly or we've seen around us in the process? So as we develop some either distortions or sort of some dirt on our lenses, we don't see things as clearly and we don't make good decisions. And so we don't make good decisions in life, it impacts our brain chemistry in an adverse way. So we have a physiological aspect to depression. That's why we call it a disease, because there truly is some brain chemistry changes that occur with depression.
You can do a lot through life. And life is exactly what you make it. If you sit back on your ass all day, you're just going to waste it. You're going to waste something very beautiful. If you go out for a walk, just at least a walk for half an hour every day, you're going to look at things like trees, birds chirping. You're going to see beautiful things. And that's what everybody should see in order to start appreciating life, so that they won't have to focus on the darkness or that dark area. And unfortunately, there are some troubled souls out there. I've been there myself. But people just need somebody to talk to, and everybody needs somebody that they can lean on, and unfortunately, not very many people are willing to reach out for that.
Life Promotion Speakers present school assembly programs that stand on their own as one of the most effective intervention programs in the country. Bob Lentz travels the country every year addressing the tough issues of bullying and suicide prevention, self-image, value, and respect. Meet Bob Lentz. Bob will never be mistaken for a video game warrior, buff and trim, while strapped down with enough bandoliers of ammunition to wage war for days. Instead, Bob looks more like the local Little League coach. But make no mistake, in the battle for the souls of a lost generation, he transcends the heroism and valor of any two-dimensional arcade character in a real war with the most dire of consequences.
So, $10. But what if I take this $10 bill and I verbally abuse it? You good for nothing $10 bill? I wish you were never even printed. You'll never be as good as your older brother, the 20. How much is it worth now? So even though it's been verbally abused, it hasn't lost its value. But what if I physically abuse it? What if I take and say, take that, Hamilton. Dude, you're wearing a wig. You have a scarf around your neck. How much is it worth now? So even though it's been physically and verbally abused, it hasn't lost its. But we're talking about kids who mutilate themselves because it takes away the other pain. We're talking about kids who mom and dad don't even have the time of day for them. We're talking about kids who have been physically and sexually abused. And we're saying, oh, come and do it the old way. It's time to, the waters are so full of issues of drug abuse and addictions that the propeller can't work anymore. But what if I neglect it? What if this $10 bill gets divorced? The parents get divorced. And it becomes a latchkey $10 bill. Spends all its time at home, lonely and neglected. Not even PlayStation 3 will play with it. No one to say, wee. Anyways, all right. How much is it worth now? So even though it's been abandoned, it hasn't lost its. Okay.
You can't keep me here! You can't keep me here!
There are about 282,000 students that are reportedly attacked in high schools throughout the nation each month.
Some of the names people would call me would be like ugly, you're a whore, why do you even dress like you do, you're dirty, do you even take a bath, you're ugly, and your mother left you because he never wanted you, because you're so ugly so he wouldn't want you to be with you. In lunch class, it was the worst because people would like throw food at me and like dump my trays. I would just hide it, and when you hide it, it's worse because it's bottled up in you and you don't really know what to do.
I think listening is key. This child is hurting someone, and I think they need to be heard first.
According to the National Education Association, as many as 160,000 children miss school on any given day because they fear being attacked or ridiculed by a bully.
So then I began to cut myself because that was the best thing to do at the time, what I thought. Because I was just thinking, I don't know what to do with the pain that I have. So I just started cutting myself. And at first it wasn't really cut. It was just, then it got deeper and deeper.
According to the Yale School of Medicine, studies found signs of an apparent connection between bullying, being bullied, and suicide.
If I could talk to a school as like when I get older, go into schools and talk about bullying, I would tell them that think about your actions before you do it. Because words hurt and you can't take back what you say to them. And I would just tell them, be nice to each other because you don't want to regret what you do now.
Same old song. You get your heart pulled by a string. Just let it go and detach everything. All the words of hate that get you down, that leave you abandoned on the ground. You're made for more than second place. You'll find your way. Just trust in faith.
Michaela had so much inner pain from being bullied that it caused her to rip her own hair out in clumps.
Why I wanted to pull my hair out was because I just didn't know what to do with all the problems around me. I didn't know how to take it out, or who to take it out on, so I just took it out on myself.
Yeah, self-harm, especially cutting, is a very interesting phenomenon. It's been around for a long time. People have injured themselves, whether it's been pulling out their hair or whether punching themselves in the face or banging their head against the wall, literally. Over the past 25 years, cutting has become more pronounced.
Suicide rates among 10 to 14-year-olds have grown more than 50% over the past 3 decades.
They wanted to feel good about themselves, and by pointing out other people's flaws, and they called me like fat and ugly and useless. They said that I was like really bad at everything, and there was no point in trying because I wasn't going to do anything good.
Countless victims of bullying are threatened, insulted, teased, or confronted with racist, abusive, or offensive taunts. Others suffer from indirect assaults that include exclusion and false demeaning rumors.
Bullying goes on many different levels. There's outright bullying, and then there's subjective bullying that's kind of under the cover, where adults can't see that. The one thing that we know is that the students see the bullying, the bystanders. And if we can get those bystanders to step in and say, stop it, we're going to do good things.
The youngest kid that I've personally taken care of was 13 and had taken a whole bottle of aspirin and was afraid. She was afraid to tell anybody. She was afraid to say there was anything wrong at home. There were a lot of home issues, but it was, people are afraid to say, this is what's going on. The kids are afraid of getting in trouble.
If you're being bullied, don't hesitate to tell anyone because it's not your fault, and you're perfect the way you are. There's no need to change yourself because someone else said something.
We should go shopping.
The key word is community. It's to make those kids feel like they're part of a community, that they're not alone, they're not suffering alone, that there are other people that can listen and hear their needs.
Michaela was inducted into the National Honor Society and continues to excel in her academics, sports, and music. Sherry was never allowed to show emotions. Thus, self-injuring became a release for the inner pain she couldn't express.
When I cut myself, the way that I felt was good. I felt relief. I felt relief of pain, relief of sorrows, relief of feeling not worthy. I felt like, I screwed up, and so I just felt like, yeah, take that, you deserved it.
People with a history of self-injury, even if they're not actively self-injuring, are 9 times more likely to make a suicide attempt, and significantly at higher risk for all sorts of other psychological distress. With non-suicidal self-injury, people want to live. They want to feel better. It's a coping mechanism.
My dad was an alcoholic. Every night it would be arguing, fighting, throwing things. I would just lie in my bed and wonder why he was so angry all the time. And I love my mom. I didn't know what she did or what I did to make him so angry and to not want to spend time with us.
We become an increasingly more complex society. When the amount of information that a human being on this planet, especially in the Western world, encounters in a week, the amount of novel information is greater than, thousands of year periods in the past. So what it requires to move from childhood into adulthood and master all of the many realms of knowledge and skill and capacity is more complex than ever before.
In my experience, and I'm talking both personally and professionally, I think emotional pain is the most difficult pain there is. There's no question about that in my mind. Dealing with that pain, everybody has their own defense mechanisms, everybody has their own reality. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you reach out to those that are around you and you ask for help. There's no shame in that. And for those people who are blessed in that they are not, at that moment in time, suffering from pain, if you recognize somebody that is, you reach out to them.
There is a non-causal correlation between self-harm and suicide. Both are most commonly a joint effect of depression. Some of the warning signs are social withdrawal from activities, recent wounds on the wrist, arms, inner thigh, and scars.
I used to cut myself to relieve the stress and anger. It wasn't out of as much of a suicidal viewpoint as it was more of a release. It was something about seeing the blood just gush out. It made me feel like I was alive, and it made me feel as though nothing could hurt me, oddly enough. It gave me a false sense of comfort.
We talked about feelings and how people have a hard time handling negative feelings, so that pain inside is just real difficult for us to manage emotionally. It overwhelms us in significant ways. So cutting is often a process by which, when somebody's mind is starting to float and sort of go in free fall outside of here, by cutting yourself, it sort of draws you back to this world, to the physical, tangible parts of where we are now, and to the material of where we are. So for some people, it's just like slapping in the face or slapping cold water in the face to bring them out of this, and so to bring it back into reality, to bring it back to the here and now, instead of the past hurts, the past wounds, the past abuse that might have occurred in somebody's life. By cutting themselves, it sort of brings them back to 2012, to right now.
when I would screw up or I knew I really disappointed somebody, I would use a needle, and I'd poke them through the fingertips and see how far I could get it through to the other side, how long I could push the needle through.
So physical pain will heal in one way or another. Emotional and mental pain will always last, and it just depends upon how much focus you want to put on it. If you're going to let it affect your life, or if you're going to actually deal with it and move on.
Ben is now discovering his true potential. After the birth of his new daughter, he now understands what it means to fight for the ones you love.
I really learned that there is a purpose. I have a purpose. That's what I'm doing now, is working on fulfilling that purpose, and hopefully this will help people see that there is value in every person, regardless of what they think in their dark times. Everybody needs them in one way or another, regardless of what you think. So don't give up. Keep on going. Keep on pressing through. I'm so happy to be here. I've never been so happy to be alive.
I've heard you say you were alone. No one was there when you needed them. All the ways you've been mistreated, still you stay in isolation. I never thought you'd let me in and tell you, but I'm still afraid to try. I'd show you so you'd understand the reasons why I've always tried. I'll be the one when you're lost, I'm by your side, afraid to run when it feels there's
Courage. My friend Tom, he lets his dog out every day. But when he let the dog out, there's a rabbit in the yard. What does the dog do when it sees the rabbit? Chase it. The dog just starts chasing this rabbit. He said, but Bob, the weirdest thing happened. The rabbit just sat there. Because at first he's like, it's going to be the dog's lunch. But when it just sat there, it's like, it's going to be a quick lunch. Drive-through. But finally the rabbit took off. But instead of running away from the dog, the rabbit ran straight towards the dog. He said the dog freaked out. The dog never saw this before. All the dog ever saw is I bark, run, rabbit, run, white tail, bite, crunch, eat. This day the rabbit's coming towards the dog freaks out, puts on his brakes, turns around, and the rabbit starts chasing the dog around the yard. Finally the dog put its tail between his legs, went back up to the porch, and scratched to get in. Tom's like, good watchdog. How does a rabbit act tough? He said, I gotta find out why the rabbit had so much courage. He said, I went outside and I said, rabbit, he said, I went, ha! He said, rabbit just sat there. So he went, ha, ha! He said, rabbit just sat there. Now I'm not gonna try to get you to believe that that rabbit chased Tom, because that didn't happen. And all my stories are true, but I can't tell you what happened. He's trying to figure out why that rabbit won't run. And all of a sudden he saw why. Behind the rabbit were some bushes. Beneath the bushes were 4 little bunnies. Aww. But why? Why didn't she run? Why did she have courage? The little one's behind her. See, I really do have 5 kids. And I'm trying to tell them they don't need drugs, they don't need alcohol, they don't need vandals, they don't need the bullying. But they're already watching you.
Just as our veterans and soldiers have fought for this country, pushing themselves to the limit in the name of freedom, fighting for something greater than themselves, we as a community of people must come together to combat these mental health issues, to fight for the ones that are suffering and bring back hope, purpose, and love to this great nation. Post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety disorder associated with serious traumatic events and can occur at any age. It can follow a natural disaster, a flood, or fire, or events such as assault, domestic abuse, prison stay, rape, terrorism, or war.
I prayed every day that I would be able to live and come home. So that was one real strong motivation in my life. Plus, being a Marine, you are highly disciplined, highly motivated, highly professional. It was unique because I've always said this, the guy on your left, the guy on your right, the guy in front of you, the guy behind you, you would die for that person in a heartbeat. No questions asked, and that person would die for you. You didn't have to be the same faith, same color, same creed, but we were all brothers. Every one of us that served together, we were all brothers and willing to die for each other. There's an old saying in the Marine Corps, if there's 100 Marines and one dies on a hill maybe 3 miles away, the other 99 would go back and put their life on the line again to bring that one Marine home, that one deceased Marine home. That's true. That's how strong that brotherhood is. It just isn't words, it's reality.
I flew 29 missions. I lost 2 men. When I bailed out, we all bailed out over by you. And, tough deal. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was numb. I told you I got it in the head there. I got a damaged prefrontal cortex.
PTSD is thought to be when somebody experiences a life-threatening trauma. So we commonly think about it when somebody is in a wartime situation or a terrorist act like 9/11, or when somebody's been mugged. The other major category is usually when somebody's been sexually violated, a rape or molestation, in some way.
Due to things that I was involved in Vietnam, I attempted suicide when I came home. I couldn't live with a lot of the things that I felt I was guilty of.
The usual symptoms that come from that kind of situation is that a person has, for some time afterwards, a re-experiencing of that situation. So it can happen either through flashbacks or through dreams or nightmares, that it just doesn't leave them. It's been sort of ingrained in their head, and they re-experience the situation, but they also re-experience the feelings in various ways. So that same fear, that same mistrust, that same violation, that same horror, that same endangerment sort of crops up, even whenever there's just a mild, maybe noise, a backfire of a car reminds them of a gunshot, and they feel like they're back in the hole.
People with PTSD present with a range of symptoms, the cause of which may be overlooked or undiagnosed as having resulted from past trauma.
Depending on the veteran himself and what he experienced, and everybody's different. Everybody's different. So, and everybody handles things different. Some people, you could drop a toothpick on the floor and they would jump. And other people, a bomb could drop off beside them and they'd sleep. They'll be sleeping. So everybody's that different. So on an individual basis, you would have to be very tender and delicate and to be understanding and actually listen.
Of the 1.9 million U.S. soldiers who have been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan thus far, as many as 700,000 will suffer from PTSD and traumatic brain injury.
Andrew, hey! We're okay. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Come on!
After the transformation, you are very hardened. You become very callous. And you move on. It comes down to one word: survival. So it's you against the enemy. Unfortunately, war is hell because nobody that's fought in a war glorifies war. It is pure hell. The agony, the horror, the hell stays with you the rest of your life. It's with you every day, and it's something you have to defeat every day. The memories you have to defeat. But they're as vivid today as they were 40, 41 years ago.
With somebody who's a veteran, the idea that I'm always in danger, that there's always somebody at my doorstep hunting me down, that any situation could erupt into a life-threatening situation. So even though they're away from overseas and they're back here in a relatively safe area, that whole idea that some of those distortions that got planted, that I'm never safe. I always need to be on guard. There's always potential danger, because that's the mindset that they had to live with in order to be able to make it home alive.
It's been an issue with all of us. Anybody that's seen anything that was traumatic in their life in that war, and you can go back to whatever you want to call it, from World War I it was called shell shock, and World War II it was called battle fatigue, okay? Unfortunately, those guys never had any help. I remember my World War I grandfather. Every time anything happened with anything to do with veterans, he cried like a baby, he shook, he cowered every time there was a loud noise anywhere, and there was never any help.
Studies estimate that 1 in every 5 military personnel returning from Iraq and Afghanistan has PTSD.
A lot of them get tired of the routine, it's the same thing every day. It's basically like being in jail. You're stuck there, you do the same thing day after day, and it gets old.
They have a little bit of intellectual relief whenever they've come back overseas, that the enemy is over there and I'm over here, even though there's still a lot of PTSD and a lot of symptoms and worry about re-experiencing in their nightmares and just in their inner being and inner core that's been contaminated with those lies. But then all of a sudden, when there's a violation here, and it's a violation that's so unannounced and so surprised, the way their interpretation is that, oh my gosh, I've been around danger, I've been afraid of danger, I've been concerned that danger could follow me. Now it has.
I can't put it into words how it destroys you, emotionally. I saw many guys crack up over there. They start laughing initially, and then they really start laughing real hard. They were cracking up. And these guys were tough guys. And I know somewhere along the line, psychologically, there are a lot of people coming back from Afghanistan, coming back from Iraq, with 1 tour, 2 tours, or 3 tours, that are having those psychological problems today. They can't get it together in their own mind of killing somebody else.
Because you got to expect death anytime yourself. What we had to do is, we don't know what we're going under. We don't know if the Germans had any of those mines, they call them acoustic mines, that they're below the surface of the water. And when you go in, the screws of your the propellers on your ship, set them off and they just blow your ship and the stern of your ship off, period. You don't know. And that's death immediately. But that's war. And you get callous to all of this.
The bloody expression of battle, its relentless pale of fear, and the constant dread of death wears down the most valiant warrior, until what's left is a shattered shadow of a man.
But after 9/11, it really hit me hard. I slept with my rifle loaded every night for weeks. I carried it in my vehicle, at my work, everywhere. Call me paranoid, call me whatever, but I was having all these severe flashbacks after 9/11 that I kind of gotten away from a little bit before 9/11.
We're worried about the soldiers coming back who've been killing people and being killed, and now their life is threatened because of anxiety or being misunderstood or something like that.
To millions of fellow combatants, the war didn't end with closing credits, cheering fans, a book contract, or even the promised thanks from a supposedly grateful nation.
Sometimes I felt that I'd be better off dead, which a lot of people thought that, but I really didn't want to die. I wanted to come home, I wanted to start my life over again, so on and so forth. But there were a lot of obstacles when I came home. First of all, you didn't want to tell anybody that you were a Vietnam veteran.
You have these traumatic events that occur. And when the event occurs, a lot of people think that the event is the most damaging thing. And the event really isn't the most damaging thing. You know, certainly it's a wound. And if it's processed well, that's all it is a wound that's healed. When it's not processed well, and most of the times wounds aren't processed well, that's the biggest issue. When the wound isn't processed well, as individuals, we make very bizarre or dysfunctional interpretation.
You know, when we came back, there was a mixed, how can I put it there? Mixed feelings. You had those who were accepting the war and those, of course, who were protesting the war. I know that when I came home my first time in the Seattle airport, I was in uniform. And these Hare Krishnas came up, throwing things, spitting. And one guy actually threw a punch at me.
Come back, I was just being bombarded with tomatoes and potatoes. I mean, there was just everything coming at me and everybody. I had my uniform with all my medals and everything put on it. And then I reported to the general, and he handed me my discharge, and I was released. I went to a PX store in right there real quick, put on civilian clothes for when I left, because being that was going on, I thought if I leave with my uniform on, they're going to get me at the other end of the gate. So at Fort Lewis, Washington, when I left. So I left my uniform and everything right in the dressing room, shoes and all, and put on civilian clothes and walked off the base and got a plane. And
all the people that I ran into just got rid of all their emotions. Were robotic. That's how you deal with it.
To a growing segment of society, dawn is a vehicle of fear. It marks yet another day of hopeless despair, unmitigated pain, and suffocating terror. To these, dawn is not a new beginning, but instead a potential end. We don't recognize a world where it hurts just to smile, where no place is safe, and where the sense of being completely alone casts its shadow over every day. But for the men and women caught in this never-ending ordeal of isolation and despair, the spiral plunges downward through hopelessness, sadness, emptiness, dread, and then ultimately death. But there is hope that cannot be hidden, and a love that fulfills and heals beyond any definition, a chance to be awakened, to remember where we came from, a chance to be free.
Driving down a highway, somewhere in the south. Are you sure this is the right way? Right way to the house. I'm getting tired and it's cold outside. But you didn't reply. What would you say if you were awake? We're not that far away. I've been trying to remember.
Matt was a young man with such promise of a bright future, but his life ended much too early.
Trapped up in this whole new...
The Roth family received a phone call on December 16th that changed their lives forever.
December 16th will be a day in infamy for me and my wife to get a phone call at 11:20 at night from the police that they found our son's body in the street.
We got to the hospital and it went through emergency, and there was just a lot of confusion. They told us that they did not have a Matthew David Roth.
You hear the words, but they don't really register. You drive to the hospital, hoping it's a mistake. They wouldn't tell us what was wrong, but you suspect that you know what you're going to find, but you hope you never find it.
And indeed, they did have a Matthew David Robb. And by the time we got to see him, he was behind a glass window. He laid on a gurney, and he was gone. And you want to reach through the glass, and you want to grab your son, and you want to revive him, and you can't believe it's happening.
Hardest thing to do was to be able to view our son's body in the hospital morgue, knowing that there had to be something beyond what we saw, that God was going to have to do something for us.
At first, I was I couldn't really comprehend it. It took a long time for it to actually settle in that he was really gone. I think at moments I kept hoping I would wake up and find out that it was a terrible dream and that he was still there, just a phone call away.
But sometimes it's not easy. Driving down the street past the cemetery, looking at something of Matt's in the house, and it's always the questions, what if? Maybe if I did something different. Is there something that we missed?
His family has chosen to make sure his life counted, as their hope is to save others from an early death by sharing his story.
I think the word final it really sheds a lot of light on it, because when someone takes their own life, they're thinking of themselves. They're not thinking about their mom or their dad or their sibling or a friend. They're not thinking about, what if my mom comes in the room after I've, say, hung myself, and she's the one that finds me? How is she going to cope with that the rest of her life?
The pain you can't describe unless you are a parent who has lost a child. We are wired to be able to be buried by our children, not the other way around.
When Matt died, it was like a piece of the puzzle of my life was missing, because he played a very unique role in my life, and dealing with his death was like trying to fill a void that I couldn't. It was like this gaping hole.
I have people look at me and they said, how do you get over the death? I said, you never ever get over it. You learn to deal with it and cope with it in degrees.
It was this dull ache. There was nothing that I could do to replace him. I hate the phrase getting over losing a loved one, because I'm never gonna get over not having a future with Matt. I'm never gonna get over him not seeing me graduate from college. I'm never gonna get over him not sharing all the joys of my future that we should have had.
Oh God, there's so much ahead of you. There's so many, I use it all the time now. Being 88 years old, I say, hey, you've got 60 years ahead of you, and some of them are gonna be a little bumpy, but my Lord, there's 60 good ones ahead of you that you'll have a ball, and don't do something stupid. That's what I keep telling them. Enjoy, but don't get stupid.
Suicide. The word alone makes us cringe. When the topic comes up, we do our best to mask our own fear, anger, and confusion. In an overwhelming majority of suicides, those left to pick up the pieces and move on seldom do. Many never recover from the loss and spend their lives in an emotional death spiral, forever trapped in a world of endless questions with no answers. We need to ask ourselves, are we doing enough? What can I do? Could my actions change the course of someone's life so it doesn't end in tragedy? We can't wait. The time is now. So the question won't be, what if? What if I could have done something different?
What if I could have done something different?
I left Africa at a very young age. I didn't have any family members, and I was totally dissociated from my core systems that I'd known. And here I found myself in college, struggling and working 3 jobs and going to school full-time. I received a notice one day that I had to leave the dormitories because I had not paid my dorm fees and I had not paid my tuition. I was faced with this profound state of helplessness. There was only one option that I could think of, and that was to kill myself. And so I wrote a note to the dean of the university. The letter got to him within a 12-hour period, and I got an abrupt visit to this rundown building where I was living. And basically, they gave me hope where there wasn't hope. They encouraged me to not be so despondent. And I remember the psychologist talked to me about praying, about being strong, about maintaining hope, and that the future would be better. He reminded me how well I was doing in school and that I would have a much better future. And finally, I was offered the option of enrolling and having to pay my tuition after graduation. So they rescued me.
If not recognized and treated, 15% of those who suffer from anorexia will die from the disease within 20 years of its appearance. Many of us begin our lives incubating in an idyllic cocoon of normalcy. Sandy lived her first 9 years in the warmth of that cocoon, with parents she loved, doing the things she loved, like camping and skiing, and just being in a family that offered comfort and trust and a carefree, secure existence. Then one day, her father died, and the cocoon split wide open. Her world came apart as the chain snapped from the anchor holding her life in place.
I always felt alone, especially after my dad died. It was kind of like the three of us, my mom and dad and I. And even though I had friends, I still never really felt a part of groups. You know, I never felt in school or anywhere else like I was a part of the crowd or like anybody wanted me to be a part. I think that's one of the biggest things that I felt is that nobody liked me.
Anorexia nervosa begins with a distorted self-image in which the individual feels very fat even though he or she is very thin. Sandy used food as a means of self-medication and comfort, which led to weight gain, but eventually reversed direction and began slowly starving herself, which led to extreme and deadly weight loss.
It was physically apparent that something was going on with me. I'd get depressed that the sun was up. So I'd draw all the shades in the little house I was living in because I would think about all the things that I used to do as an athlete and I couldn't do anymore. It kind of started to hit home how much I did not want to be alive.
It is believed that anywhere from 5 to 20% of women who develop complications from anorexia will not survive. This makes anorexia one of the most dangerous mental disorders in the world.
The long-term and short-term effects really are kind of linked to the medical conditions that you would see. So over the short term with changes in weight with a person who has anorexia, you're actually going to see electrolyte imbalances, possibly dehydration, possibly passing out because of weakness and the inability to nourish the body. So you're essentially starving the body. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies.
I was up to taking 400 to 500 laxatives a night, 4 to 5 times a week, which is not the most pleasant thing to be going through. And my whole life became totally entrenched in the whole cycle. And an eating disorder is a binging and purging process. Binge is taking in the food. The purge is getting rid of it.
Sandy was definitely a patient that taught us an awful lot. We always feel like patients are our best teachers, and she certainly was a very good teacher.
This is where I guess people say that people who think about suicide are being very selfish because they're not thinking of the people that love them. In my mind, I don't think that way. We don't think that way. We think of how life will be just much easier for everyone else because we are more of a burden and cause too much pain. So it would be easier just not to be here, because then I wouldn't be causing pain to other people.
Sandy would have likely been trapped there for the rest of her life if it were not for one person committed to reaching down and holding onto her for dear life, her mother, Kathy.
I had so many dreams for Sandy when she was dreamless. I had hopes for her when she was hopeless. And I commanded and I demanded that she live when she wanted to die. She doesn't have to say a word. And I just know through her eyes when we're on a roller coaster again. To see a child that you gave birth to and have so many dreams for just evaporate before you is extremely painful.
Kathy became Sandy's advocate, doing everything in her power to reverse the course of Sandy's life. She hid food, moved Sandy to other states for better medical care, and stopped at nothing to address the issues that threatened to overwhelm the both of them. Because of the love of her mother and the patient guidance from her counselors, Sandy has begun to see her own self-worth.
How do we help people help themselves from the inside out? And how do we equip people around all of us to notice and do something, to not be afraid to say I'm worried?
You know, so many times therapists have told me, you know, I lived too much in the past. And I haven't been able to get out of the past. And for some reason, maybe now I can get out of the past. And have been finally, for whatever reason, whatever has clicked, I finally have realized I can't get hung up in that past. And I can't hang on to those negative feelings about myself anymore. Because I guess there are positive things about myself.
Grace fell victim to bulimia as a way of losing weight after a traumatic experience changed the course of her life.
When you don't eat or when you make yourself throw up what you've eaten, it's really difficult to just stop because it's almost like an achievement. A lot of it is pride, and a lot of it is meeting your own standards almost. Like if you haven't eaten for 2 days and you eat a little bit, you're just gonna wanna get rid of it because you've come that far. It's just like any other achievement that you're trying to get to.
Like for a person who has bulimia, looking at knuckles, they're actually their fingers and their hands. They may use their hands or their knuckles to actually start a purge, so that you may see calluses on their fingers. You may also see changes with teeth and dentition because of the acids that are actually coming from purging.
When it really got bad, it was definitely affected by an event that happened. I was raped, and it definitely took a big toll on my mind.
So when somebody has been sexually abused, there's a lot of interpretations that they make from that. I'm dirty, I'm a failure, I'm rotten. The only reason why people like me is my body. or that sex equals love or attention.
When you're violated like that, you kind of start blaming yourself, and I guess the eating disorder was a way to almost punish myself and to also feel better because I just wanted to change after that. So the eating disorder definitely changed me, but not in the way that I was hoping.
So she's re-experiencing all that pain of the violation, of the torture, of the escape, of the lack of trust, of the disrespect that occurred. That all that is starting to bubble forward. That's part of what PTSD is, sort of the bubbling of all those things forward. So since she can't handle that, why people cut, why they self-harm, is to try to escape some of those feelings, or to let them out in a way that's a little bit more tolerable, like jabbing yourself with a pin, or cutting yourself with a razor, or pinching yourself, or burning yourself with a cigarette. I can't handle that pain from my past, but I can handle this pain.
Well, it's affected my heart. I still sometimes have heart problems from excessive vomiting, and I was told that I may not ever be able to have kids. I was also told by my nutritionist that my organs function like a 60-year-old's, and it really messes with your joints and pretty much everything in your body. I tried keeping my eating disorder a secret for a year or two, and I tried stopping on my own, but without anyone else knowing, it was hard to get support and find comfort in other people. So stopping on my own was almost impossible.
Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, with the death rate 12 times higher for females 15 to 24 years old.
Like, eating disorders aren't worth your time or your health or your life. And struggling with thoughts of suicide alongside that is very difficult. I was kicked out of treatment for an eating disorder because I was struggling with suicide, with different like self-harm issues.
When you heard about suicide or the rare instance thereof, it usually involved adults, an adult. And I believe because children in Africa grow up in communities where they have extremely strong and profound support systems. The whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child.
And there's people out there who really care and who will do anything to keep you from hurting yourself more. And I think in the midst of being so sick or being so depressed, you forget completely about the people that love you. Well, I'm going off to college to become a dietitian eventually. And I want to help people who are struggling with the same thing that I struggled with. The people that I've met through everything that I went through really inspired me. Whether they were good influences or bad, they inspired me to do well in my future and to help people. I really feel like I'm using it to better myself instead of dwelling on it. It's more of a landmark to kind of see how far I've come and never have to be there again.
There are no Purple Hearts or medals of honor for Bob and the hundreds like him who stand in the gap for this generation. But to the thousands of young people who emerge from their hopelessness because of the tireless efforts of Bob and other unsung heroes like him, medals would be only a fraction of their true, deserved reward.
So 2 core beliefs so far, one more rad. Number 1, no matter what has happened to you, just like that $10 bill, you have not lost your. Number 2, just like that rabbit we need to have, stand up and do what you know is right. And number 3 is respect. I know it's only almost a part of the history books now, but I hope with everything in me we never forget 9/11. But we lost 3,000 lives. And when I was there on the day before, on on 9/10/09. What happened is this. I just spoke in Connecticut, and I had my son with me. And I took him to that awesome symbol of freedom, Statue of Liberty. And we went up, and I took a picture of him on the rim with New York behind him, and I'll never lose the picture because the trade towers are still standing. And it was so awesome. But we headed out back to the airport, and I got lost. And anyways, I looked at my watch, and I said, Tim, I don't think we're going to make it now. I said, we'll try. But if we don't get there in time, we'll just get a hotel tonight, and tomorrow we'll go see the Empire State Building and tour the World Trade Centers. We have documented proof of this next part. We got the car back, got to the airport, and the departure time had passed. But the flight was delayed. And we didn't think it was a big deal then. And we got up just with seconds to spare. And the next day, when I was watching the TV and I saw those planes go into those towers, I have to be honest, my first thought was, that could have been my son. It could have been my son. Then it hit me. It was somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's mom, somebody's dad, somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's friend. And people across this country have asked me, Bob, how can there be such a lack of respect for life itself? That people can take out 3,000 lives in the name of terrorism, and some people across the world actually applaud. Please hear me, I don't think it starts with terrorism. I think it starts with something so small we don't think it's a big deal, like vandalism. And I've been criticized for putting vandalism and terrorism in the same sentence. But here's why I do it. The issue that connects them is the issue of respect.
If we don't go through this life trying to help other people, then we're all going to be alone. Every single one of us has something to give, whether it be a poem, whether it be surgery because your heart is pumping wrong. Everyone has something to give. And just because you don't know what it is right now doesn't mean you're not going to find it. Doesn't mean that you don't have a purpose. We all have different things to contribute to this world as a whole.
I would change the word lost from, because if you look at the Bible, and they had the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, the prodigal son. Take the word lost, and instead of bad, put in treasure, the treasured coin, the treasured sheep, the treasured son. Is a treasured lost person, do they have the dignity, because they're a human, worth being their friend, whether they ever come to Christ or not? Will they love them all the way to the gates of hell? Or will we give them our 10 minutes and then expect them to live like us?
We don't understand the stresses that kids go through. We don't understand the socioeconomical problems that kids go through. We don't understand that once a kid goes into that stage and if they don't get any help, that is a great loss of asset for the world, because kids are our future, and if we cannot take care of them, if we cannot prevent them from dying, I think somehow we all fail.
Through the hardships of life, we must find the inner strength to survive and live in the freedom of the great and wonderful plans that God has for us.
Well, Jesus Christ is my homie. Jesus Christ is my friend.
Jesus is my Lord and Savior.
He's my main man.
My hope is to be able to help others.
I find the biggest joy in my life is when I'm helping other people.
And that's the one thing that I always remind myself
because that's not what we're here to do, to judge other people. And that was a strong message from Jesus Christ.
And I have the feeling when I'm really down, like in Vietnam, and I knew I was going to get killed or something, and I'm praying, I could almost feel him right next to me.
I thank God every day that I was able to live. I pray that I can be a good example to somebody along the way.
I would like to think that so many people whom I've helped throughout my career would not have had that assistance. We all have a purpose in life, and there's always hope.
At the darkest hour, when all light seems to fade into the abyss, the time has come to make a choice that will define your destiny, a choice that will change everything. Falling to your knees to explore the darkest part of your soul and search for a truth that surpasses your own understanding, a truth that will set you free.
If there is a God, then I would say that he's thrown things in my direction to see how I deal with them. And I think he's testing me.
My Lord, my Savior, my Redeemer carries me when he has to, has spoken to me, to my heart.
If you're a vet coming home from Afghanistan or Vietnam, be proud of what you've done. And if you've got problems with it, ask. Seek out help. It's out here. More so today than ever before.
Jesus showed compassion to the hurting, love for the broken, purpose for the hopeless, and a legacy that would change the face of this world. Jesus came to this earth to show us truth, unconditional love, healing, and the ultimate purpose for life.
Ian Thomas said, I argue that Christ was not crucified between two candles in a cathedral, but at a crossroad, so cosmopolitan that it write his name in several languages, where cynics curse, where prostitutes sell themselves. Because that's where Jesus was. And that's what Jesus was about. And that's where churchmen ought to be. And that's what churchmen ought to be about.
Jesus never gave up, never gave in to the lies of this world. He stood up in the face of adversity and showed us life in his death. He stood for something that he believed in so much that he gave up his life to show the lost and broken what real authenticity looked like.
We're all faced with trials every day of our lives. We know that. But there is a hope. There is a cure for all the things that we go through. And I know that having a relationship with Jesus Christ is the best thing these kids could be given. And I think that opportunity is something that we just need to be a little bit more upfront with the kids about, that there is hope and they don't have to take care of things on their own.
As far as an individual veteran, you would have to be a caring person in a sense and try to become a friend in some kind of way, because it works. It really does. If you really care. If you don't, it shows. It really shows if you don't care. Very noticeable.
If we really want healing and transformation, we have to get down to the core of who we are. What gives us value, what gives us purpose, meaning, passion, joy, connection, love. That's the core of who we are. Well, God created us wonderfully and has an incredible purpose for our life. But he gave us this instruction manual to be able to use to say, hey, this is how you're going to get the most out of life. Do these things because this is how your brain chemistry, this is how relationally, psychologically, spiritually you grow. And don't do these things because these are going to detract from that, and these are going to interfere, and these are going to ruin, and these are going to injure your use of your mind, your use of your free will, your engagement with me, with yourself, and with the people around you.
I really think it comes back to our sense of value. You have to get up every morning and say, you know what, I'm here for a reason. It doesn't matter what people have said about me or what somebody's tried to do to make me feel inferior or insignificant. There's something God created me to do. And I think when you feel that sense of value, it's a lot easier to shake off the discouragement and to rise above, the things that try to pull us down.
Would I change my experience in Vietnam if I had the chance to? Well, sure. but since I can't do that, I think we have to realize it was probably for the best. The way things turned out, it turned out pretty good.
This life story is the story of you. In the search for purpose, we all come to a crossroad in the road of life.
We come to make meaning of our lives. That's the one thing human beings have to be able to do in order to be at peace, is to create a narrative, to create a story that is cohesive and makes sense, even if it includes suffering. And what human story doesn't include suffering? I mean, I've never met somebody who hasn't suffered. It's part of the human experience. So to open to that is a gift. And to see our life and, even our suffering as a gift is an enormous shift in the way that we think about our world. And I really think people are moving in that direction, because there's really no other place to go.
The story of your life is being written as we speak. Blank pages of a leather-bound book that is being filled in each and every day. There is a narrative of your life filled with agony, heartache, struggles, excitement, promise, love, and honest friendships that fill the crisp pages. The experiences of your life make you who you are. It's what drives you, what motivates you, what makes you, you. If we give up, we cut off a checkpoint, and the rules of life no longer apply. But if you don't give up, out of your darkness, the mind, body, and soul will become ironclad, bulletproof, with a future of ambition, desire, and unsurpassed possibilities. Take on the challenge of life so that you will discover the exhilaration of a priceless victory. It is time to rise up once again, stand tall on the forefront of the enemy lines, to fight through the fire of the enemy. Rise up and take back what was once stolen, once broken, that was once a shattered mess, and to reclaim what is ours, to never give up, never to retreat, never to compromise, only to fight the impossible fight to save even just one. Without shame, without judgment, without agenda, there is always a choice, and that choice is now up to you. You have seen the truth, and the truth will set you free.
All the words of hate that get you down, that leave you abandoned on the ground. You're made for more than second place. You'll find your way. Just trust in faith. Get up and run, don't be afraid. You're so much more than words they say. Oh, than words they say. they say.